Hi, boys and girls, Mr. Philosophus. We are coming to chapter 5 in Hatchet. If you remember, chapter 4 ended where Brian is safe and he has landed in the middle of the woods in Canada. He's beat up pretty bad and he definitely is injured from the plane crash, but he is alive. So, chapter 5. His eyes snapped open, hammered open. And there were these things about himself that he knew instantly. He was unbelievably, viciously thirsty. His mouth was dry and it tasted foul and sticky. His lips were cracked and he felt as if they were bleeding. As if he did not drink some water soon, he felt that he would wither up and die. Lots of water, all the water that he could find. He knew the thirst, and he felt the burn on his face. It was mid-afternoon, and the sun had come up over him and cooked him while he slept, and his face was on fire. His face would blister and peel, which did not help the thirst. It actually made it much worse. He stood using the tree to pull himself up, because there was still some pain and much stiffness, and he looked down at the lake. It was water, but he didn't know if he could drink it. Nobody had ever told him if you could or could not drink lakes. There was also the thought of the pilot, down in the blue with the plane strapped in, the body. Awful, he thought. But the lake was blue and wet looking, and his mouth and his throat raged with thirst, and he didn't know. He didn't know where there might be another form of water that he could drink. Besides, he had probably swallowed a ton of the water while he was swimming out of the plane and getting ashore. In the movies, they always showed a hero finding a clear spring with pure, sweet water to drink. But in the movies, they didn't have plane wrecks, or swollen foreheads, or aching bodies, and thirst that tore at the hero until he couldn't even think. Brian took small steps down the bank of the lake. Along the edge there were thick grasses and the water looked a little murky, and there were some small things swimming in the water, small bugs. But there was a log extending about 20 feet out into the water of the lake, and a beaver dropped from some time before. With old limbs sticking up, almost like handles, he balanced on the log, holding himself up with the limbs, and he teetered out past the weeds in the murky water. When he was out there, the water was clear, and he could see no bugs swimming, so he kneeled on the log to drink. A sip, he thought, still worrying about the lake water being clean. I'll just take a sip. But he brought a cupped hand to his mouth, and he felt the cold lake water trickle past his cracked lips and over his tongue, and he could not stop. He had never, not even on the long bike trips in the hot summer, been this thirsty. It was as if the water were more than water, as if the water had become all of life, and he could not stop. He stooped and he put his mouth to the lake, and he drank, pulling it deep and swallowing it in great gulps. He drank until his stomach was swollen, until he nearly fell off the log, and then he rose and he tripped his way back to the bank, where he was immediately sick, and he threw up most of the water. But the thirst was gone, and the water seemed to reduce the pain in his head as well, although the sunburn still cooked his face. So, he almost jumped with the word, spoken out loud. It seemed so out of place, the sound. He tried to say it again. So here I am. And there it is, he thought for the first time since the crash. His mind started to work, his brain triggered, and he began thinking. Here I am, and where's that? Where am I? He pulled himself once more up on the bank to the tall tree without branches, and he sat again with his back against the rough bark. It was hot now, but the sun was high and to his rear, and he sat in the shade of the tree in relevant comfort. There were things to sort out. Here I am, and that is nowhere. With his mind opened and thoughts happening, it all tried to come in with a rush. All of what had occurred, and he could not take it. The whole thing turned into a confused jumble that made no sense. So he fought it down, and he tried to take one thing at a time. He had been flying north to visit his father for a couple months in the summer, and the pilot had a heart attack and he had died, and the plane had crashed somewhere in the Canadian North Woods, but he did not know how far they had flown or in what direction he was. Slow down, he thought. My name is Brian Robeson. I'm 13 years old, and I am alone in the North Woods of Canada. All right, he thought, that's simple enough. I was flying to visit my father, and the plane crashed and sunk in a lake. There, keep it that way, short thoughts. I do not know where I am, which doesn't mean much. More to the point, they do not know where I am. They, meaning anybody who might want to be looking for me, the searchers. They would look for him, look for the plane. His father and his mother would be frantic. They would tear the world apart to find him. Brian had searched on the news. He saw it and he'd seen in movies about lost planes. When a plane went down, they mounted extensive searches, and almost always they found the plane within a day or two. Pilots all filed flight plans, a detailed plan for when and where that they were going to fly, with all the courses explained. They would come. They would have to look for him. The searchers would get government planes and cover both sides of the flight plan filed by the pilot and search until they found him. Maybe even today. They might even come today. This was the second day after the crash. No, Brian frowned. Was this the first day or the second day? They had gone down in the afternoon, and he spent the whole night out cold. So this was the first real day. But they still could come today. They would have started the search immediately when Brian's plane did not arrive. Yeah, they probably would come today. Probably come in here with ambitious and amphibious planes, small bush planes with floats that could land right here on the lake and pick him up right here and take him home. Which home? The father home or the mother home? He stopped thinking. It didn't really matter. Either on to his dad's or back to his mom. Either way, he'd probably be home by late night or early morning. Home where he could sit down and eat a large, cheesy, juicy burger with tomatoes and double fries and ketchup and a thick chocolate milkshake. And then came hunger. Brian rubbed his stomach. The hunger had been there, but something else, fear, pain, had held it down. Now the thought of a burger, the emptiness roared at him. He could not believe the hunger. He had never felt it this way. The lake water had filled his stomach, but left it hungry, and now it demanded food. It screamed for food. And there was, he thought, absolutely nothing to eat. Nothing. What did they do in the movies when they got stranded like this? Oh, yeah. The hero usually found some kind of plant that he knew was good to eat and that took care of it. Just ate the plant until he was full or used some kind of cute trap to catch an animal and cook it over a stick on a little fire. Pretty soon, he had a full 8-course meal. The trouble, Brian thought, looking around, was that all he could see was grass and bushes. There was nothing obvious to eat aside from the million birds and the beaver. He hadn't seen animals to trap and cook, and even if he did somehow get one, he didn't have any matches, so he couldn't even make a fire. Nothing. It kept coming back to that. He had nothing. Well, almost nothing. As a matter of fact, he thought, I don't know what I've got and what I haven't got. Maybe I should try and figure out just how I stand. It will give me something to do, keep me from thinking about food until they find me. Brian once had an English teacher, a teacher named Perpich, who was always talking about being positive, thinking positive, staying on top of things. That's how Perpich had put it. Stay positive and stay on top of things. Brian thought about him now. He wondered how to stay positive and stay on top of this. All Perpich would say is that I have to get motivated. He was always telling kids to get motivated. Brian changed position so he was sitting on his knees. He reached into his pockets, and he took out everything that he had and laid it on the grass in front of him. It was pitiful enough. 1 quarter, 3 dimes, a nickel and 2 pennies, a fingernail clipper, a billfold, a $20 bill, in case you get stranded at the airport in some small town and you gotta buy food, his mother had said, and some odd pieces of paper. And on his belt, somehow, still there, the hatchet that his mother had given him. He forgot about it, and now reached around and took it out and put it in the grass. There was a touch of rust already forming on the cutting edge of the blade, but he rubbed it off with his thumb. That was it. No, he frowned. Wait, if he was going to play this game, he might as well play it right. Perpich would tell him to quit messing around, get motivated. Look at all of it, Brian. He had a pair of good shoes on, sneakers, almost dry, and he had socks, and jeans, and underwear, and a thin leather belt, and a t-shirt with a windbreaker that was so torn it hung on him in tatters, and a watch. He had a digital watch on his wrist, but it was broken from the plane crash. The little screen was blank, and he took it off and almost threw it away, but he stopped. The hand motioned, and he laid the watch on the grass with the rest of it. There, that was it. No, wait, one other thing. There were all those things that he had, but he also had himself. Perpich used to drum that into your head. You are your most valuable asset. Don't forget that. You are the best thing that you have. Brian looked around. I wish you were here, Perpich. I'm hungry and I'd trade everything that I have for a hamburger. I'm hungry. He said it out loud, a normal tone at first, then louder and louder until he was yelling it. I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. When he stopped, there was a sudden silence, not just from him, but from the clicks and burps and bird sounds of the forest as well. The noise of his voice had startled everything, and it got quiet. He looked around and he listened with his mouth open, and he realized that in all of his life he had never heard silence before. Complete silence. There had always been some sound, some kind of sound. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was so intense that it seemed to become part of him. Nothing. There was no sound. Then a bird started again, some kind of buzzing insect, and then a chattering and cawing, and soon the same background of sounds, which left him still hungry. Of course, he thought, putting the coins and the rest back into his pocket, the hatchet on his belt. Of course, if they come tonight, or even if they take as long as tomorrow, hunger's no big thing. People have gone many days without food as long as they got water, even if they don't come until late tomorrow. I'll be all right. Lose a little weight maybe, but the first hamburger and shake and fries, it'll be right back on. A mental picture of a hamburger, the way that it showed in television commercials, thundered into his thoughts. Rich colors, the meat juicy and hot. He pushed the picture away. So even if they didn't find him until tomorrow, he thought, he would be all right. He had plenty of water, although he wasn't sure if it was good and clean or not. He sat again by the tree, his back against it. There was a thing bothering him. He wasn't quite sure what it was, but it kept clawing at the edge of his thoughts. Something about the plane and the pilot that would change things. Ah, there it was. The moment when the pilot had his heart attack, his right foot jerked down on the rudder pedal and the plane swerved sideways. What did that mean? Why did that keep coming into his thinking that way, nudging and pushing? It means, a voice in his thoughts said, that they might not be coming for you tonight or even tomorrow. When the pilot pushed the rudder pedal, the plane had jerked to the side and assumed a new course. Brian could not remember how much it had pulled around, but it wouldn't have to be much because after that, with the pilot dead, Brian had flown for 1 hour and maybe more on the new course. Well, away from the flight plan the pilot had filed, many hours, maybe 160 miles per hour. Even if that was only a little off course with that speed and time, Brian might be sitting several hundred miles off of the side of the recorded flight plan. And they would probably search the most heavily along the flight plan course. They might go out to the side a little bit, but could easily be 300 or 400 miles to the side. He could not know. He could not think about how far he might have flown wrong because he didn't know the original course and didn't know how much they had pulled sideways. Quite a bit. That's how he remembered it. Quite a jerk to the side. It pulled his head over sharply when the plane had swung around. They might not find him for 2 or 3 days. He felt his heartbeat increase and the fear started. The thought was there, but he fought it down for a time. He pushed it away, then exploded out. They might not find him for a long time, and the next thought was there, that they might never find him. But that was panic, and he fought it down and he tried to stay positive. They searched hard when a plane went down. They used many men and planes, and they would go to the side. They would know how he was off from the flight path. He had talked to the man on the radio. They would somehow know. They would find him, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, soon, soon. They would find him soon. Gradually, like sloshing oil, his thoughts settled back, and the panic was gone. Say they didn't come for 2 days. No, say they didn't come for 3 days. Even push that to 4 days. He could live with that. He would have to live with that. He didn't want to think of them taking any longer, but say 4 days. He had to do something. He couldn't just sit at the bottom of the tree and stare down at the lake for 4 days. And nights. He was in the deep woods and he didn't have any matches. He couldn't make a fire. There were large things in the woods. There were wolves, he thought, and bears and other things. And in the dark, he would just be in the open here, just sitting at the bottom of a tree. He looked around suddenly and he felt the hair on the back of his neck go up. Things might be looking at him right now, waiting for him, waiting for dark so they could move in and take him. He grabbed the hatchet on his belt. It was the only weapon that he had. It was something. He had to make some kind of shelter. No, make that more. He had to have some kind of shelter and he had to have something to eat. He pulled himself to his feet. He jerked the back of his shirt down before the mosquitoes could get at it. He had to do something to help himself. I have to get motivated, he thought, remembering Perpich. Right now, I'm all I've got, and I have to do something.